Hare Krishna, Gauranga. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts on some of the study I've been doing in the last couple of days. With Shastra, Srila Prabhupada's books is the beginning, the middle and the end of our studies. So of course his main endeavour was to bring the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. But he also of course wrote many other books like the Nectar of Instruction and the Nectar of Devotion, which were coming from the books of our Goswamis like Rupa Goswami. And he also instructed in his books that we should read and extract the nectar from the books of our acharyas. In one purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adilila 5:203, he mentions that we should read the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, which is written by Sanatana Goswami, and he basically says that if one wants to know about the subject matter of devotees, devotional service and Krishna, they must read that book. At the end of the preface to the Nectar of Instruction, or the Upadeshamrita, he mentions that Rupa Goswami had written other books such as the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Vedagda Madhava and the Lita Madhava. And he says that one should follow those instructions very strictly. So we should have a great understanding of Srila Prabhupada's books. But Prabhupada also encouraged that his disciples should go on to translate all the other books that are out there. Prabhupada said that he was going to run out of time, and he had wanted to make commentaries on so many of the other books like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and so on. And certainly these books by the Goswamis he wanted to bring as well. And they've been done now by great devotees like Bhanu Swami, Gopi Puranadan Prabhu and so many others. And my main lecturer that I'm listening to at the moment is Sripada Indra Prabhu, who of course is very famous for his chanting of the holy names and his hundreds and hundreds of recorded kirtans. What's maybe possibly a little bit more lesser known is his fantastic and really deep classes. He would speak on the Shastras for at least 3 hours. So this obviously means that starting the morning program class at 7:30 and going right on till 11, 12 o'clock sometimes, And a lot of the time he would quote from these books like Vedagda Madhava, Lita Madhava, Jaiva Dharma and many others. And he would get into quite incredible pastimes and stories of Krishna, the gopis, the manjaris and so on and so forth, quite esoteric subject matters. And so it makes me wonder sometimes, how can we enter into that level? I personally can't, and I tried on Prabhupada's instruction and the instruction of Indra Prabhu to read these wonderful books, and I found it very difficult. But on listening to Indra Prabhu's classes for 2 or 3 hours, you gain an incredible insight into the nectar of these stories about Krishna and so on and so forth. One example came actually where on hearing these classes of Indra every single day, I picked up that he quotes a verse before he starts speaking, along with obviously the usual pranams, like the Prabhupada pranam and then Om Jnana Timarandasya and so on and so forth. He quotes this one verse which I later found out after about an hour of searching across the internet with the help of my wife, which was also quite a nice intense study session to try and locate the verse. It's called the Sri Ananga Manjari Pranam, which goes as follows, for those who probably want to find out what the verse is in a bit more of an easier way. It's Sri Radhika Prana Samam Kaniyasim Vishakika Shikshita Saukya Sostavam Lilamrito Nachalanti Tanga Madurim Ananga Purvam Pranamami Manjarim, which says, I offer my most humble obeisances to Sri Mati Ananga Manjari, whose body overflows with the sweetness of Lilamrita. She has learned from Vishaka how to serve carefully and gracefully. She is identical to the life force of Sri Radha, and she is Sri Radha's younger sister. Now this verse is located in what's called the Gaura Govindachan Smaran Padati. And a Padati is basically a collection of slokas and stories that helps a sadhaka gain depth in their Krishna consciousness. In particular, this Parati's purpose is to help the devotee attain Gopi Bhav. Again, as it says, Indra Prabhu's topics tended to be quite advanced, and on locating this book and reading it for the last couple of days, I've been finding quite a bit of bliss in that. There is some amazing gems you can find just by doing a bit of shastric study, digging a little bit deeper, and to that degree that we should go deep is found in that example by Indra Prabhu again, that he would take a Sanskrit book or Bengali book or whatever it is of the Goswamis. He would take it to one local speaker there, a Bengali devotee or a Hindi speaking devotee or so on and so forth, Sanskrit Pandit, and say, translate it for me. So that devotee would produce the translation, Indra Prabhu would read it, and then he would take it to another devotee, and then another devotee, so at least 3 devotees, different devotees, to get the best and clearest translation so he could understand everything he could about those topics of Krishna. So we should cover Srila Prabhupada's books front to back. It used to be a common practice in ISKCON. You would find especially in the ashrams, that devotees would have their own individual copies of the books. And it's not the most encourageable thing, but sometimes they would write notes on the actual book itself, but it's probably best to not write on the shastra, write on notepads or write on the laptop or whatever. But devotees would have these books completely threadbare, because they took that as their own book to study, their own personal Bhagavad Gita, their own personal set of Bhagavatam, so on and so forth. So we should cover the books back to front, and we should also, take Prabhupada's instruction and the example of our senior devotees to look at these other books of the Vaishnava acharyas and really go deep and dig out some wonderful nectar. This Gaura Govindachan Smaran Padati is full of incredible shlokas that I've never heard before, so it is always worthwhile taking that extra bit of time to read something different or to do a little bit of hunting around for nectar, because it's out there and it's available to the devotees, especially that on Audio ISKCON Desire Tree there's a whole, several hundreds of PDFs which contains a lot of the Vaishnava Acharya books, so that's also worth taking a look at. But that was just a quick little mention of the nectar of studying Shastra. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.